So the 15% threshold of Tory MPs sending letters to the chairman of the 1922 committee has been exceeded, which means that there's going to be a vote of confidence on Theresa May as leader of the Conservative Party later today. Note that the threshold has been exceeded, so it's not just 48 letters, there are at least 48 letters, and what we don't know is how far over the threshold that has gone. And I just want to talk a little bit about how we got here, because really the seeds of this moment actually lay in last week in Parliament. I did a video about how the government had lost 3 votes in a single night, actually in a single hour, and we are here because of that. And this isn't really being talked about in the media, so I think it's important that it's mentioned. The crucial vote was the one that confirmed that the government was in contempt of Parliament and forced the government to release its legal advice. Now that vote was quite close, but it's had a huge effect, because once it did release that legal advice was dynamite. It included information that the Northern Ireland backstop, which people really don't like, could be a permanent feature, and that solidified MPs against Theresa May's Brexit deal. Although she might have lost that vote anyway, it solidified things to such an extent that she delayed the vote that should have taken place yesterday. That didn't take place. Instead, she was in Europe, in the EU, trying to get further concessions. You could see when she was giving her statement about delaying the vote, you could see behind her the expressions on the faces of the Tory MPs behind her, and it was almost inevitable then that the 48 letters that were needed would get submitted. We're now at this stage really where the Tory party is splitting itself apart. We're at this stage because of what Labour did last week in submitting that motion. So calls for Labour to now have a motion of no confidence in the whole government. I'm kind of thinking that that would have been a mistake if they'd done that yesterday when those calls came in from the other parties. The Greens, the SNP, the Lib Dems all wanted Jeremy Corbyn to do that. I think they have their own reasons for doing that, probably because they want to propel things towards a second referendum, a people's vote. And I think that would have been a mistake, because losing that vote, which I think they would have done, would have made it much harder to do one in the future. So we're in a situation now where Labour has undoubtedly pushed the Tories towards getting rid of their own leader, and that isn't really being talked about. People are focusing on the Conservative Party, and it's understandable, because this whole issue, this whole Brexit issue, started because David Cameron, as Conservative leader, wanted to draw a line under Europe in his own party because it has divided them for decades. Well, when Theresa May did her statement in the House a couple of days ago to delay the meaningful vote the following day, she made the point that everything else that government normally does has been put on hold for Brexit and will be put on hold until she gets her deal. She said that. We've got a situation in our country at the moment where there's rising homelessness, people are dying on the streets in record numbers, we've got people accessing food banks in record numbers, we're approaching the winter, and there is always a crisis in the NHS at winter over beds and spaces and you know, people getting the care that they need. And so for her to say basically to the country that everything is on hold until she gets what she wants is really, really frightening. If she wins the vote later today, she cannot be contested again within the Conservative Party for a year. None of that is likely to resolve the crucial issues that divide the Conservative Party. It's not going to solve things, unless she won by a massive margin, in which case the Brexiteers, who are the main people that are opposing her, will look a little bit diminished. Whether it will actually stop them from voting against the government remains to be seen, but I doubt it. And if she loses, then she can't contest the leadership contest, candidates need to come forward, and eventually they would be whittled down to 2, and the Conservative Party members would vote on who becomes Prime Minister. So we could end up with a leader that is perhaps more Brexiteer, but the vast majority of Conservative MPs are not in that bracket. So potentially it's just more trouble for the Conservative Party, whichever way you look at it. They're either stuck with Theresa May for another year at least, stumbling on but not being able to get rid of her, or they get a new leader who potentially will not command the authority of the MPs sitting behind them in the House of Commons. Anything can happen.